Hi everyone, welcome to Wool and Spinning. My name is Rachel and I would like to welcome you to this place. This is episode 77 and I hope that you are enjoying some summer sun wherever you are. We are currently completely engulfed in wildfire haze. It's actually quite amazing how, what the smell is in the air. The wind's changed, and if anybody's been following the news and knows what's going on in British Columbia, we have been experiencing an incredible summer in terms of really, really bad forest fires. So anyways, we have finally been affected down here in the Lower Mainland, and we are completely hazy and it's hiding the sun. And it's supposed to get super hot today, so I thought I would record this morning, and then I'm going to try to get the dogs out for a bit of a walk before it gets hotter, because they haven't been able to go out because of the air quality. So they've just been a little bit out in the backyard, but our elder dog starts to cough quite badly, so we just have to be really careful. I hope that everybody who's watching had a great Tour de Fleece. I was trying to find my words. Tour de Fleece is over. I can't believe it. We're already into August. I hope you had a great Tour de Fleece. I am not going to do prizes and whatnot on the show. It's just too much, and trying to distribute everything is just too hard. So there's going to be an extra episode of Wool and Spinning Radio, which is through the Patreon stuff. You do not have to be a Patreon subscriber to listen to this particular episode, but in the next couple of weeks, please watch for an extra episode coming live, which will announce prizes, and will be just a quick sort of reflection on what how my Tour de Fleece was, and how I found it this year, because of course Spinzilla is on our doorstep, and registration for teams is right now, and then individual spinners who are spinning on teams, team captains, rogue spinners can all start registering. I think it's September 1st or August 30th, I can't remember. Anyways, it's right at the end of the month. So there's lots going on in the spinning world right now. This is a really busy time of year for people, and to go through prizes and stuff, I'm going to do that on the Wool and Spinning Radio show. So like I said, you don't have to be a Patreon subscriber to view that particular episode, but please watch for it, because maybe you won something. I have promised to share and show my Lendrum quill this episode. The reason why I don't have it with me is because it's upstairs and it's put away. And I also thought, it was actually my husband that suggested this. I thought it would be actually kind of neat to bring it onto the live show, which is our next episode, so that you guys can ask about it and inquire. Because me sitting here showing it is one thing, but you guys being able to actually ask questions about it is another. So I will have it next episode, episode 78. We had a question in the Ask Anything thread in Ravelry, in the Ravelry group, and it was such a great question, and I thought it was really wonderful to talk about it here really quickly. And it is from Hedgewitch13. She says, "Hi, I really enjoy your podcast. Thank you so much. They're always so full of energy and direction. Thank you. I've been spinning for about 2 years, and I'm beginning to feel like a rabbit in the headlights and don't know what to try next. How do you decide on your next direction? Thank you." So the reason why I really wanted to talk about this and why I wanted to answer it on the show is because I think a lot of us experience this, and a lot of us experience this sort of almost like the dogs are drinking, almost like a pause in sort of trying to figure out where we want to go and what we want to do with our spinning, the direction we want to take, how we want to progress. And it can be really overwhelming. You know, you read a book, or you see a podcast, or you hang out with some spinning friends, you go to a workshop or a class, you go to your local guild, and all of a sudden there's all this stuff that you want to try, and how do you decide what to do? Or you feel like there's so much out there and none of it is actually doable because it's maybe too advanced, or you feel like it's just too much. And that can feel really overwhelming too, and it can be really difficult to sort of sift through all of that and figure out where to go and what to do. So how I figure out when I'm feeling a bit basically sort of at a crossroads, right? I want to do something, and I want to start a new project, but I don't really know what I want to do, and I'm feeling really sort of against a wall. And there is a thing called burnout, and I don't mean burnout in sort of the traditional sense. I mean in the letdown after you've done something really big. So like people talk about, you know, the after you have a big theater production, if you've been on the stage and part of a big production, that sort of let down afterwards and that sort of slump that you go into afterwards, and it's just coming down off of that high. It's the same with really big projects. You maybe have spun something or worked on something and it took a lot of energy and time and thought, and you worked on it and you slogged through it and you've got this awesome finished project, and then it's sort of the slump after of like, what to do now. So number one, don't be too hard on yourself. Be open to sort of the ebbs and flows of creative mojo. I think I've blogged about that to death, about sort of those ebbs and flows and the waning and of your creative mojo, and that's okay. But if you're wanting to take your spinning to another level and you're feeling like you've sort of hit a plateau a little bit, you're still sort of a beginner, you want to make that jump to be an intermediate, I would really encourage you to start thinking about what kind of yarns you really like to knit with if you're a knitter, what kind of yarns you really like to knit with, crochet with if you're a crocheter. What kind of projects do you want to make if you're a weaver, and what types of yarns do you want to work with if you're a weaver? And let that sort of direct you a little bit so that you can really perfect those yarns that you want to use the most. If you're somebody that wants to, that knits mostly color work, for example, and you really love working with 2-ply woolen spun yarns, perfect that, really pursue that and work on that technique and really get that to a point where you're only using your hand spun to knit those projects. If you're a weaver and you really want to make cotton dishcloths, which is something that I'm going to start working on next year, and you only want to work with your hand spun, start focusing on learning how to spin cotton and really perfect that. I'm sorry, Charlie's chewing and he's just right here next to me, so if you can hear him, I'm really sorry. If you have a whole bunch of hand-painted braids in your stash and you really want to start learning about how color works together and how braids of color work, pull out like 3 or 4 of your braids that are, very different from one another and spin them each a different way. Spin one a gradient, spin one a fractal, spin one a 2-ply fractal, spin one into 3-ply sock yarn or into a traditional 2-ply that's from a center pull ball so that the colors ply back on themselves, which I've talked about in a previous live show. And see how the colors work up and what you like and what you don't like, and then work with them. So take those yarns and work with them, knit with them, crochet with them, weave with them, do something with them so that you can continue to learn and you can continue to sort of say, hey, I really like that, or hey, I really don't like that and I'm not going to want to make another gradient, for example. Or I really don't like knitting with 2-plies, I really like working with 3-ply. And that kind of gives you your direction for the next thing that you want to learn. And you just slowly start chipping things away. And one of the interesting things is how often I come back to things. So, I was on a real spinning singles kick a year ago, and I spun like 3 or 4 skeins back to back that were all singles. And then I kind of got waylaid with other stuff for a while. I worked on other things, and now I'm back to spinning singles again. I've got 2 projects on my wheels right now, which I'll talk about today. Both of them are singles. And I really wanted to perfect, now coming back to singles, I really wanted to perfect getting my the amount of twist that I'm putting into my yarns over the length of the singles really consistent, so that no matter what part of the yarn you're looking at, the twist angle of the singles is really, really consistent, and it's just got a really consistent twist throughout the yarn, because I find with my singles sometimes there's thinner spots, sometimes there's thicker spots. Singles, because just by their very nature, are never going to be 110% even. There's always going to be little inconsistencies throughout the yarn. That's just unavoidable. If you look at commercial yarn, it's the same. There are parts of commercially spun singles yarns that are a little bit thicker and a little bit thinner. To the untrained eye, you'd never notice, but when you really start pulling that stuff apart, you can see that even the machine can't be absolutely perfect. So one of the things I've been working on is keeping my length of draft really consistent, and the number of times that I'm treadling and how much twist I'm putting into that certain section of yarn really consistent. And that's sort of the next thing when it comes to spinning singles that I wanted to focus on. So you can kind of get into the little like nitty gritty details of some of the things that you've already been doing and really hone in on it and really focus on it. The other thing I would like to mention, and my mom always says this, and she's an artist, and I really appreciate her wisdom on this. don't think that you've learned something because you've done it once. I really encourage people to try things 2 or 3 times, because the first time you're doing it the way you were told how to do it. The second time you're starting to get the hang of it and you're starting to improvise and do it your way. The third time you do it your way, and you've figured out, you've truly learned that skill, and you've learned what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and you've really honed that skill to be your own. And I'd really encourage you to singles are a great example. One skein of singles does not mean you can spin singles the best way that you know how. The second time you're going to be even better, and the third time you're probably going to be pretty awesome. So I'd really encourage you, as you're figuring out where you want to go now and what you want to decide to do next, really try to perfect those skills, not just once or twice, but try to do a project three times. So, work with different braids of fiber, obviously. Like my singles that I'm working on right now, I've got 2 different braids of fiber going 2 different bases. One's Corriedale, one's Grey Masham. And they're a little bit different, but they're both long wools, a little bit coarser. And I'm learning a lot, and because I've done a lot of singles in the past, now I'm coming at it with a different view and a different lens with my previous learnings in mind, and things are going pretty well. So I hope that helps, and I'd really love to keep this conversation going in the Ravelry group. We also need to get on with the show. So in today's show, I've got a little bit of color studies. I've got some 2 finished spins that I wanted to share with you, and a little bit of hand spun knitting, which is awesome. So I hope you enjoyed the show, and stay tuned. So I was really torn about what to share with you first. I'm kind of looking around going, what should I share first? But I think I'll share my color studies first. This is finished, but I haven't washed it yet, and I haven't photographed it. This was the final skein that I wanted to finish for color studies. So we've been working on color studies in the Ravelry group and on the Slack channel since March or April. Was it April? We did Gotland was our breed portion of the study alongside BFL because they're both long wools. And we looked at complementary color studies. So we were looking at purple, green, and yellow and how you can spin them together. If you'll remember from a previous episode, my Gotland I had spun as a center pull ball 2-ply, and this I spun as a gradient. Now, if you know me, and Katrina, my dear friend Katrina, who dyed all this stuff, she is Crafty Jacks over on Etsy, Ravelry, and Instagram. She dyed all of this for us and carded it up on her drum carder. She always laughs at me because she loves gradients and I don't. And I love that we both don't love the same things because that's what makes it really cool. And the things she does with her gradients and her knitting and whatnot, I just love. But spinning gradients just aren't my favorite thing to do. So I did spin this as a gradient because I had done something totally different with my Gotland. And I really like how it turned out. I think from the yellow to the purple, it really preserved the colors. The colors still complement each other. It is a split complement. And they still play off of each other really nicely. This is not my best spinning. I got a new wheel. I know. I said in a previous episode that I wasn't in the market for a new wheel. I wasn't lying. I had already found this wheel and I had been waiting to, been waiting on the woman who was selling it to decide whether or not she actually, really wanted to sell it. And then we had trouble actually getting together for me to actually pick up said wheel and to spin on it and whatnot. So part of the reason why this isn't spun as well as I would personally like it to be spun, I wanted it to be a little bit finer, was because I was learning the wheel. So I spun this at 6.4 to 1, I think was the ratio, so 6 to 1. And I drafted once, basically 1.5 times per treadle, roughly. And it turned out really nicely. I did Navajo ply it. I don't generally like to Navajo ply my woolen spun yarns, but I had done a short backward draft letting the twist in. So pinch, pull back, let go, pinch, pull back, let go. And it created a really airy yarn. The chain ply broke twice, so there wasn't quite enough twist in it in 2 places. So that's pretty good. And I did ply it to about 2/3 of the ply twist, singles twist that I had put in, and I really like the twist angle. So I will be talking more about this in the Thoughtful Spinner essay that will come out in September, where I'll do sort of a reflection on the whole color study in general and share some of the reflections from fellow spinners in the Ravelry group, namely from our friend Becca and our friend Rebecca, who both had really awesome thoughts about their color studies and the breeds themselves as part of the breed study. So that was really great, and I really enjoyed spinning that. And I'm also really glad that it's done, because Katrina and I have been brainstorming about what we want to do in our next breed and color study coming up in October. What I will tell you is it will be the fine wools, and I'm not going to tell you anything more about that. So stay tuned for more, because that's really exciting. So anybody who's been doing the color study with us and the breed study, we've got a couple more months to finish that up, and then we'll be moving on to another color study and some new fibers to reflect on and work through together, which is really great. The other thing that I finished was my superwash BFL. So this was, I still don't know how much this is, what weight wise. I think it's 8 ounces, but I think it's actually more like 6 ounces. I ended up with roughly, it's been washed and set, but I haven't reskeined it. I ended up with roughly 716 yards, roughly. I have to reskein it to figure it out exactly. 2 ply. I basically took the fiber that I had and I divided it into 2 piles, and I spun 2 bobbins and then I plied them. I did nothing more fancy than that. I put 9 treadles per roughly about 16 inches of drafting length into the yarn, and then I plied 6 treadles per 16 inches of plied yarn. So I plied it at 2/3 again. I've been really into these like really balanced yarns right now. So these yarns that when you ply them, when they come off of the wheel, they twist only once or only 2 or 3 times, more than once, but 2 or 3 times. And then when you wash them, they're perfectly balanced. I've talked in the past about how I feel about balanced yarns that come straight off the wheel, but this turned out really beautifully in terms of when I pulled it off the wheel, it was twisted like this, and then after washing and all that twist dissipated in the water, it's ended up just absolutely laying perfectly. So 9 treadles per 16 inches on a ratio of 6 to 1 again. This was my first spin that came off of so I was borrowing my friend Kim's Susie, Magic Craft Susie, and this was half spun on that and half spun on my Susie. So I never told you the wheel that I got. I said I got a new wheel and then I got sidetracked. So I bought a Susie Pro. There are a myriad of reasons why I bought it and why I was looking for a wheel like that. My dream wheel for many, many, many years was a Lendrum Saxony. But we don't have room for a Saxony style wheel. And then I started looking at the flat iron, and then I started looking at the Shacked Reeves, the 32-inch drive wheel. We just don't have room. Like when Mike and I were looking around our house and kind of figuring out, because I've got my loom and I have my other wheels. I had sold my Spinolution wheels and I had sold my Minstrel. And so I was down to 3 wheels. My Lendrum I use mostly for teaching. And my Sidekick remains mostly folded up for travel. I will take it to our guild meetings sometimes. I took it to my Bast Fibers course in Victoria, but it's not my personal favorite wheel. I find it a little bit frustrating for a couple of reasons that I can talk about another time. And the majority of my spinning I do on my matchless, but I keep my matchless in double drive. So I was really looking for a wheel that could do the ratios of a Saxony wheel and the speed of a Saxony wheel without going back into a mini spinner. You guys know how I feel about the mini spinner. And without going into another, into the size of a Saxony or a traditional wheel. And I just kept coming back to the Suzy. So my friend Kim lent me hers and let me play with it, and I was able to find one secondhand. I found a Pro. I was looking for a regular Suzy, but I was happy to get a Pro if that was what I found. I really like it. It's really fast, so it was what I was looking for. And I have ordered the lace kit for it because that will give me the fast ratios, and the fastest ratio, I think if my memory serves, is 28:1, I think. So that'll, I'm hoping to use that for spinning cotton, cashmere, getting into some of those fibers that I've been kind of waiting to spin because I was really hoping to get a wheel that would be better to spin those things on, if that makes sense. I just felt like I really had a gap in my spinning tools of something that was foldable that I could take with me if I wanted to. Although it is quite a heavy wheel, it's 6.5 kilos, but it does fold down, and that I could have that little bit faster production spinning. So I applied this on that, and I really enjoyed playing with it. I used the Delta flyer for that just to get a feel for that, and that it was fine. With the Delta, it's got the V on it. It doesn't have a traditional orifice, so you do have to sort of keep the yarn straight on. But it's nice because with the Suzy, you can change the angle of the flyer, and you can move the flyer around and the maiden around. And so I just tilted it off to the side so that I could ply sort of like this, and it worked really well. So I'm really, really happy with my purchase, and I will definitely not be acquiring any new wheels anytime soon. I may be letting a wheel or two go, but for now, I'm gonna be just learning on it and really perfecting my skills on that wheel because I'm really enjoying the speed of it. I have to talk faster because I'm running out of time. I'm not going to talk about this spin very much because this was the enhanced content for this month. So it was the How I Spin content for August. But this was Nest Fiber Studios in Amanar in Merino and Silk. It's all finished. I had over 600 yards from it. The reason why I'm not going to talk about this very much is because I really wanted to explore for the enhanced content. I get a lot of questions about how I keep my length of draft and how many treadles and how much twist I put into my yarns, and how I keep that really consistent. So that is what August's content is about. So that's the enhanced early bird tier on Patreon. And I know that's really mean to kind of teaser that and not tell you guys exactly how I spun this, but I've had so many questions about it, and I spent many hours putting together all that content for this month. And this yarn, I'm really loving it. It's part of a larger project that I am working on. I talked about this a long time ago, so if you don't remember, I don't blame you. I have a whole bunch of braids in my stash that are all variations of these colors, and I had set them all aside. And I am going to eventually, once they're all spun, they're all going to be part of a massive weaving project. And so I'm spinning them all 2-ply, sport weight, and hopefully eventually I'll have enough to do what I'm hoping to do, because I want to create quite a big piece of fabric and hopefully weave a tunic. That's my goal. So we'll see. But I need a lot of yardage. And I need a lot of, I want fibers that when I finish the fabric, that it'll really, it'll be hand wash only, obviously, but that the fabric will really, finish up nicely, basically. And because I don't want to use superwash because it'll fall apart. So I want to make sure that the fabric will, because one of the braids that I've chosen to include is superwash, but everything else isn't. So I'm hoping with the variety of fibers, everything's going to be spun on its own. Nothing's going to be combo spun in one braid. Everything's going to be on its own. And then I'm hoping to create sort of a pseudo plaid, fake plaid kind of thing that will eventually create like an apron tunic kind of thing. So we'll see. This is a long-term ongoing project, and this is part of that. So if you're wondering about major details as to how I spun this, please check the Patreon. Knitting. I resurrected my pop blanket because I was kind of looking for something to work on, and I didn't want to pull out the sweater I'm working on because it was really hot and I was sitting outside with the kids and I wanted something small. So you'll remember these little, this is by Tin Can Knits, this pattern. And I had shown these eons ago. Like, I'm thinking it might actually be like 6 months ago, around January, February, that I showed these two little squares. I was originally going to do the Sunny Spread, which is a crocheted blanket that looks like this, but I had read the pattern wrong, and you actually need a whole other repeat to finish off the sun, basically. And none of these yarns, I just don't have enough. Like, these are like little, and the crochet just takes up too much yarn because I only have these like little, like 5-gram samples, and I'm only using my carded fiber samples. So these are like the little bundles of carded fiber. None of them are they're all woolen spun. I had like criteria as to the yarns that I wanted to use in this blanket. So I've been slowly pulling out those suns and re-knitting them into my pop blanket. So this one was December's Fiber Club when we were still doing Fiber Club on Patreon. This is December. I just did this one last night. And I just did this one last night, and this is some carded stuff. This was from my vanilla shawl from a couple of years ago, that really big, massive behemoth green and blue vanilla shawl that I did. This is some of that left over from the end. It's got a ton of sparkle in it, and I'm going to wash these today and get them blocked. My friend Chrissy of Snappy Stitches, she made this blanket, and she blocked the squares as she went so that when they were done, she could just put them all together. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm kind of torn. I might make it into a blanket, or I might actually make it into a wall hanging. I'm going to see once I have a certain number. We have nothing above our master bedroom, like above our master bed. We have nothing above our bed in the master bedroom, and it's just a huge, massive blank wall. And I've been trying to figure out what to put up there for a long time because I don't want to just have photos. I was really hoping to put something up there, like a piece of something. And my mom has a quilt above their bed, and I'm kind of thinking that I might actually put this up, and it's sort of a rectangular wall, like, because our bed is quite high. There's just the shape that would work would be rectangular. Anyways, we don't really need any more blankets, and so I'm kind of thinking about doing like a watercolor, like where the squares would move in sort of a watercolor in like a rainbow. So from across the wall hanging from Roy G. Biv, right? So from red all the way across to violet. Which means I have to make some more carded skeins, but I've got so much fiber that I could totally make a rainbow. So I'm kind of thinking about that, and I'd love to hear what you guys think, because putting our knitting on the wall I've never really thought about doing that before, but I think it would be perfect because we don't really need any more blankets. So, and it would still show off my hand spun, which was the whole idea in the first place. So anyways, I'm going to get these blocked and I'll show them to you finished next show, and hopefully I'll have a whole bunch more to show you, and I'll be able to tell you what I think about my project, about possibly doing a wall hanging. I'm thinking I might lash it to a branch and then hang it on the branch. Anyways, I have this vision bear with me. I think we're going to run out of time for today because the camera is going to time out. So I'm going to say goodbye. We have a live stream coming up, not this coming weekend, but the weekend after. I think that's the weekend of, let me just really quickly check. The weekend of, it'll either be the Saturday or the Sunday, the weekend of the 12th or the 13th. So I'm thinking that we'll probably do the live stream on Saturday, August 12th in the morning for Patreon subscribers. So stay tuned for more. And until next time, happy spinning. Bye guys.